Are you ready to run your short-term rental business like a superhost? If so, look no further than Guesty for Hosts. Guesty for Hosts offers listing management for all three major OTAs, Airbnb, Booking.com, and VRBO. With Guesty for Hosts, you can create a branded direct booking website in minutes. I've been able to hit 61% direct bookings in my business and automate daily tasks such as communication with cleaners and communication with guests. Click the link in the show notes to get an additional $20 off your first month.
Welcome to Live, Let, Thrive, a podcast about the Airbnb life, the share economy, and everything in between. Here are your hosts, Myka and Steve.
Hello.
And welcome back to another exciting episode
Of Live,
Let, Thrive.
What's up, Myka, man?
I'm chilling, Stevie Stacks. How you doing?
Oh, man, doing great. We got a legend on the show today.
Who we got?
I forgot his name. No, just kidding, Willie. This is episode, first, let me set it up. This is episode 206 of your favorite Airbnb, VRBO, short-term rental, midterm, all that fun stuff. Podcasts in the world, coming at you from Arlington and Fort Worth, Texas. And we got a special guest named Mr. Will Slickers joining us, man, tearing it up in the hospitality industry, short-term rental industry, and podcast industry. We're going to dive into all three of those things today. And welcome to the show, Will. How you been, man?
It's good to be back on the Live, Let, Thrive podcast. That's for damn sure. It's been way too long, and I love listening to your guys' voice and seeing your faces. So thanks for having me back on.
Oh, thank you so much, man. It's like behind, if you're watching the video, behind Will, instead of, the Galifianakis thing, in between two ferns, you got between two Ross paintings. So
in
really
between
nice.
in between two frames, I guess, if you want to call it.
Got the gold on there. Yeah, the golden boy.
Yeah.
What's up, man? How you been?
Dude, busy, but good. So as you guys know, we talk a lot more often these days than we have in the past, but it's been good, man. It's been a crazy, year or so since we've last really chatted on the podcast. And
yeah. Well, 2020 lasted like 5 years. So I guess it's been
feels like
while.
It for sure.
For real.
You moving to Miami? I heard you're moving to Miami. Is that true?
Maybe not letting the cat out of the bag just yet, but no, I definitely like Miami. Want to go out there a lot more often, and my lease expires in October, so the opportunities are endless.
Then you just moved.
I just moved, yeah. But like COVID was like 5 years, but 2022 has been like a day, and it's already halfway through. So it's crazy.
It's super crazy.
It's
man.
crazy.
A lot of stuff going on.
So give us a short reset of who you are and what you do, man.
Yeah. Well, for those who haven't heard my first episode on Live, Let, Thrive, the best Airbnb, VRBO, midterm, long-term, short-term, whatever kind of term podcast we want to get into. I'm Will Slickers, and I have got my career started within hotels, but then within hotels, I got exposed quickly into short-term rentals, Airbnb, that type of stuff. But out of boredom and wanting to learn more about the hotel industry and the world of travel, I started a podcast and was able to take it full time in December 27th, 2019. From there, COVID hit and was a whole lot of confusion to work through, but we still made it. And March of 2022 marked 4 years of running the podcast total. And we launched a podcast network called hospitality.fm, which I'm happy to say this podcast is a part of the family. So it's been, again, just a crazy year, but that's kind of me in a nutshell, if that makes sense.
Nice. And I remember something that you did say on the first time you hopped on our show. You said that, man, y'all got a great show. I mean, it hasn't replaced your income yet. And they're like, you can make money doing this. You're like,
I do remember that conversation.
Yeah. And you're like, yeah, you quit your job from doing podcasting. It's like, holy shit. So when you came to us with that, you starting your network and you're gonna get us paid and all that, I was like, yeah, hell yeah, let's do this, man. It's Slick Willie all the way.
Yeah. Well, it takes a lot of work for sure. I wish it was as instant as a lot of people think it is, from like seeing other networks, right? You have Barstool Sports, you got Gimlet, you got all these other networks that are like, oh, we signed so-and-so and they made $1 million. I'm like, that's fuck. I wish I could do that. But we're not in that position, obviously. But the long-term goal is to really just show that the creators like yourselves and others around the world that we've seen, I think the network's almost at 30 podcasts total right now within 5 months of being legit. And it's like, okay, let's show the world that this voice of hospitality, short-term rentals, professionalism within this space, whether it's tech, operations, cleaning, you name it, like we're going to show that this voice can be amplified through a network, which is the power of numbers. So yeah, it's crazy to go into and like think about. Like I would have never guessed that 4 years ago when I started doing Slick Talk as a kind of a boring, passion project, that would be here. So it's just blessing and really cool.
For real,
Awesome,
for
man.
real. So hey man, like, so outside of the podcast stuff, are you still in the STR space?
I'm not out, that's for sure. I'm definitely not as in, if that makes sense, with the operation. So we have a company called Recreation Vacation Rentals out in the Pacific Northwest. Then we have we have properties out in Washington State. We have a property out in Florida near Orlando, and I kind of gave the reins to my co-founder. We were, hey, let's split everything. You take on owners and growth. I'll take on operations and marketing, or whatever that may look like. And we had a good 50-50 split, but he saw as the network took off unexpectedly too. I thought it was going to take a lot longer to get to that point, but as that started to get more busy and start consuming more time, he and I had a really good heart to heart on, like, all right, my passions with audio. I love doing the podcast stuff. I'm not against vacation rentals. It's not like I'm leaving the industry. I'm just doing a lot less, and I'm really more or less like, hey, you take this as far as you can get it, and I will just be here to help in any way or form that I can, and that makes sense. So yes, that's kind of the place that we're at.
You graduated. You're the STR podcast spokesperson, man. Congratulations.
There we go.
So
There we go. Yeah, I'm no longer doing housekeeping calls at 6 a.m. or whatever. So
now I wonder how that works, because I have a partnership. My partner Federico, we have our Arches Rentals together, and we're doing pretty big things. And I often wonder, how does that work when, let's say, my true passion, is music and art and stuff like that. And let's just say this thing keeps rolling. It's able to pay us a good, a good amount of money, and the podcast does well. How do you have that conversation with a partner saying, okay, I kind of got this other thing going on. I want to be a part of this. It's not fair to say I still want 50-50. I mean, how do you, because I imagine something, okay, you get 75 of the profits. We started this together, 25, I get 25, and I'm more, if you need me kind of deal. How does that work?
Yeah. And it kind of happened just kind of like that. It's one, it had a lot to do with myself internally. I had to kind of have that conversation inside, like, okay, like, I have 2 kids. I always look at that Elon Musk interview, right? Like, he's got SpaceX, he had Tesla, and he only had $18 million left. And he had to decide, do I put it on to Tesla and make sure it guarantees survives? Or do I put the 18 million into SpaceX and guarantee that it survives by doing that and risking that one is going to die? One will die. Or do I split it and take the risk of 50-50 and they both could die, right? So that's a big question that went through my head. And granted, I'm no Elon Musk. I'm not investing $18 million into a company because I wish I had that kind of money. But in my head, I kind of had that conversation. Okay, like, what child, and I hate phrasing as the father-child situation, but like more or less like, what baby of mine that I've created and have had tons of passion and joy creating, what one do I spend that time with? What one am I going to make sure either lives, or do I take the risk and see what happens with both and risk losing them? And for me, it just kind of came down to, what makes me the happiest? Where do I see myself always thinking? You can kind of just pick on some self-awareness stuff. And for me, it was just the podcast. Granted, I'm still doing my 2 shows, but the amount of time I'm putting onto my 2 shows is not as much time and energy as I'm putting into the network and to getting the right platforms and the tools and the structure and, talking to sponsors and creating the pricing and doing all the other stuff that really goes in behind the scenes. And recreation for me was kind of like not an inconvenience, but when I did get that call or did get that text from housekeeping or from maintenance or from an owner, it was like, oh man, I just don't literally have the time. I'm in meetings all day, or I have this, or I have that. And so, realizing that, not to ramble on, but I talked to my partner. He also has a podcast as well, so he gets that kind of side of things, which is really great because we can empathize with each other a little bit. And he's like, look, my podcast isn't as busy. It's a fun project for me to have. It's a great creative outlet, but this is my baby as well as much as it's yours, and I have nothing else going on outside of this. Like, the podcast is fun, but it's not paying my bills. So let's talk about what does this look like. And we just were honest with each other. This is the biggest thing getting into a partnership, is like making sure that you guys know each other and yourselves, because I think when it came to that conversation, there was no bad blood. Like, we were able to all right, we're going to switch our weekly call to bi-weekly to monthly, and just see what happens, and go from there, and just trust that things are going, and we check up and reach out when we need help and communicate when we need to vent, and like just have a genuine conversation. And it's been great. Like, I couldn't be more thankful for his openness and receptiveness of like understanding that he's losing a partner in the sense of having to take on more work, and still a startup. Like, we're not making buku bucks to pay a nice salary as a rental management company. So that's I'm super thankful for him to be willing to do that.
And without going into like the exact numbers, does it change the whole dynamic? Does it, the percentages and all that change?
Oh yeah, yes, definitely. Yeah. So we had that talk. It's like, okay, what's my workload look like? What does my role look like? It's more becomes like an advisorship rather than an operator or COO as I was. And so, yeah, I gave up some equity, but we talked about, okay, like, so once the taxes are done this year, we closed out, 2021 and all that stuff. Let's look at the profit, if there was any. Let's talk about a split. And then from this moving forward, we'll talk about what does that look like again in the future. Does it mean, so we had to do I think it's an addendum or amendment, one of the two, onto our partnership agreement. So stating that, I went down to 25%. I was no longer getting 25% of profit from revenue, but more or less from payout at the end of the year. All these types of things, and we just kind of went into it. We put in my new meeting times, like, hey, we're going to meet once a month or bi-weekly, whatever that schedule looked like. Still be involved with advisor meetings, because we have 2 advisors from within the industry that we meet with once a quarter. So still doing like some of the big decisions, technology. So if we change the tech stack or like all this other stuff, being involved in that conversation, but the day to day pretty much just was wiped off my plate. Yeah.
That's what's up, man. So it sounds like you're really growing in this hospitality STR industry. I'm loving that, man. So question. So do you listen to all the podcasts, or do you just kind of manage it all, make sure it all gets out there?
So that's the thing. It's really hard. I don't want to say I don't listen to them, because I do. Like, I'm a big believer in trust but verify. So like, we have a team taking care of a lot of the podcasts, right? So I want to make sure I like you guys. I like a lot of the podcasts. Actually, I can't say I like a lot. I like all of the podcasts. There's like a certain reason why everyone that's on the network is on the network, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I'll listen to a couple of episodes every week, just kind of like picking from the bundle. And it's nice because like I get a sneak peek before anybody else gets to hear it go live. So it's really cool with that. But my big mantra or saying is trust but verify. So do I listen to it all the way through? Do I listen to every week consistently? No, I don't have the time. Yeah. I do bookmark a lot, and like on weekends when working out, or if I'm picking up, some extra work that I need to get done on Sunday, I'll put one on and just try to. But it's dangerous. It's a dangerous thing, because like podcasts like yours, man, like it will make me stop working. And that's the thing. I'll stop and I'll be like, I'll have my pen and paper there, and I'll be like, okay, no. Like it gets a little distracting. So I'm like, okay, I have to kind of pick and choose my battles sometimes with that, but it's good.
Yeah.
Have you noticed any like hot topics throughout all the podcasts right now? The things that are really going on in the STR space that everyone's talking about?
I think the one thing that I'm seeing from all the shows is getting more real estate heavy. I'm noticing a lot of people are talking about taxes and real estate and the investment and ROI rather than the management and the cleaning. I think that like it's cool because you can kind of see that short-term rental operators are now evolving from operators. They're no longer just worrying about cleanings and turnovers. They're more worried about the growth of their portfolio. What does that contract value look like to their brand on top of the resale or the sale of a property type deal? And that's one thing I'm seeing a lot of the same guests, if that makes sense. Not that everyone's kind of grabbing from each other, but you can tell guests submit their like inquiry to multiple shows, and then just so happens that everyone's got availability, so they record, and then they all seem to go out within like a month span of each other. So I've seen like Johan Weiss on multiple shows. I've seen a lot of different rotating people, but it's like, okay, there's a theme. Like
Johan.
Everyone's kind of yeah. Johan's good.
We have an important question. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
We have an important question, man.
Mm-hmm.
So as we've done over 200 podcasts already, things come up. We find out that past guests, stuff happened with them, and we might want to, might not want to have that podcast anymore. How do you approach situations like that? Where you have to go back and say, hey, maybe we should pull this one. What's the best way to do that?
That's a really good question. I've actually never had that kind of come up.
We had Donald Trump on, so we're wondering if we should pull that. Definitely don't pull that one. Will's like, don't pull that one, man. That's fucking
no.
That's 1 million views.
Yeah, no, that's see, that's the thing, and it comes back to kind of like the earlier conversation of self-awareness / like where does it fit within your moral standpoint? Like if you hear like a guest, like it depends on like maybe the situation too, but my thing is like metrics and numbers are all good. Like love that. Love to be metric focused. But there's a poison and a danger with that, because you can come too metric and too number focused, and then you forget the quality of content to keep the nature of the show, like the nature of yourself, and you kind of become numbers focused. I had a hotel owner that I worked for was all about the numbers. Didn't care about the guest experience, didn't care about the team experience and the operations, just cared about the revenue and the numbers. And that's a toxic place to be in. And so I think like, if I had a guest that was on the show and they started, spewing off a bunch of random stuff and craziness, I think I would probably go to the point like, numbers are great, love it, but at the end of the day, do I want my name and my brand and my association with that person? And especially like when you're on a podcast, like when you're interviewing people, like you guys are interviewing me now, you have to kind of be like very excited for them, like very involved. Like you're like showing that you care about this person and the things that they're doing. So at the end of the day, like that's your reputation. So I wouldn't hesitate to delete an episode that had some conflict of moral ground, if that makes sense.
Yeah, delete Will Slicker's last episode.
Come at you. Let's say this guy scammed a guy out of $1 million, but he has really, really high. His episodes bring in like a lot of listeners. What do you say about that?
I said delete it, man. Delete it.
Okay.
What you should do is get the guy he scammed on the show, get that episode to outrank all of that stuff, and then delete his episode and talk trash.
That's some Clubhouse stuff right there. Actually,
guess we got to call Biden. No, I'm joking. No, but okay. I was just wondering. That's a good question, Steve.
Yeah. That's cool, man. So yeah, all the dark side of podcasting aside. So okay. We got a lot of listeners on the show that are starting out, getting into the STR world. They're hitting us up, asking us for advice, anything. So how would you, because you're the podcast guy, how would you, they say, well, should I start a podcast? How should I start a podcast? What should I do? And how will I expect it to help my business? What advice would you give them for potential podcasters who want to help their STR business?
Well, I think if you're just getting into STR, wait on doing the podcast. Like get your feet wet, get a couple properties under your belt, have some fire moments where you're putting out fires all the time and you're kind of in that hectic host stage, right? Like I think, I started the podcast out of boredom, not knowing it would take off, but it still took 2 years of me being an operator. I was a hotel manager for 2 years until I was able to quit my job. And was at a higher management level than most people my age were ever. So I think like definitely get your feet wet. But if you're going to start a podcast, I think again, I have seen so many people start a podcast because one, it was trendy in COVID, or everyone's got a podcast now, so why not? Why don't I? My biggest thing is like make sure you're going to do it consistently. That's the big thing. I don't like the opportunity, start something, didn't see the results immediately, so I quit and then go on to the next. I think the stat, what's the stat? Apple Podcasts, there's all like 26% of Apple Podcasts on that platform are duds, which meaning they got maybe up to 1 episode or they almost did 10, but then they stopped. And it's just wasted space on the platform now. So it's like, okay, don't be that 26%, right? Like be the 74% that actually is consistently being part of the knowledge base.
I would venture to say it still drops off at 25, 50. There's probably still more drop-offs to when you get to that point. Yeah. So people that get past 100 is very rare, I would think.
Yeah, 100%.
I would think and I think that's one thing that kept us going. I think the short-term rental space got so trendy with Airbnb that it branches off, right? Like how you said, everyone's getting into real estate. You can branch it off into real estate. You can branch it off into management. There's so many things around it that is just a hot topic, man. And then once you think it's going to die off, something else comes in, a new program, a new listing platform comes in. So that's why I'm happy we chose this topic as our podcast, because man, this is really, really helpful. Really helpful.
100%. And that's the thing too. Like you're in a space that is just very like it's on rapid growth. Like we're not slowing down anytime soon. The only time that can really shut down is government regulated, type shutdown. So or God forbid, knock on wood, COVID mandate, lockdowns and all that crazy shit. But it's like the podcasting space. Like I think, we kind of talked about it before even recording really. It's like I started, I was just doing audio. I didn't care about video, and now it's turned into video. I didn't care about, quality, right? Like, so I didn't think I needed all this equipment. I didn't need a ring light. I didn't need a $750 or $1,000 camera. I didn't need a $400 microphone. Like, I didn't need a chair to sit in to look all fancy sometimes when it comes to like all this stuff. But like, it's just at the end of the day, like, I think the more you care about the content and the audience and the community, because like, it's crazy, dude. Like, it's crazy to hear some of the stories that people will send you based off of just listening to your podcast once or 100 times. So you build like a genuine connection with people. And I think like it's been like not in a weird, I don't know how to describe it without sounding like cocky, but when you're running into people at conferences or whatever, and they're like Will Slickers or Myka or Stevie, and you've never seen their face, never heard their name before. And you're like, who the heck is this? And they're like, oh, I listen to your show all the time. That is like a weird feeling to experience. And so I think like just be aware that this thing isn't like, it's not a local small town, like everyone knows each other within 5 blocks. Like you're meeting people from London, China, Mexico, all over the world, like all over the United States, Canada. Like a huge amount of my audience is in Canada. I'm like, I've been to Canada like once. So like, hi everybody, like Germany or wherever these people are listening from. I was even watching some numbers too, like India. I've never been to India in my life, but there's about like a couple hundred people listening to the show from India. So it's like, okay, like, so it becomes like really intense when you look at it that way, on like real people are really listening to your voice. So
That's
I don't know if that makes sense for your question.
I just like literally ran into that issue when I was at the Dallas STR regulations meetup, and introducing myself to this guy, and we were all, it's like only 5 of us who were pro STR, and I introduced myself to this guy, and he looks at me and he's like, "Hey, you're the guy from the podcast." I was like, yeah. He goes, "You're Myka." And he goes, "Where's your partner, Steve?" I was like, "Oh, he's not here right now." But yeah, it's so crazy that people know who you are. And you're like, "Oh, damn," you know. And he's like, and he like start going into my backstory. "So are you still operating in Arlington?" And I'm like, "Damn, he like knows your whole life."
Yeah.
But it was crazy, you know. So yeah, that's a real cool. That's what I love about it as well, man.
He's a rabbi, right?
Yeah. And he was just like, yeah. And he like showed us he was showing me his little guesty thing. And I was just like, oh, damn, that's crazy. But yeah, man, it was pretty crazy.
It was the coolest part of it. It kind of like, in a way, it documents our journey. Cause like we started so I had a long time ago, when podcast just started, I started like a rock and roll podcast with some buddies, and, you know, kind of fizzled. And it was fun. It was fun as fuck, but it kind of fizzled out. And didn't do it for a few years, and then got into the, you know, real estate a little bit, you know, started real estate investing, got on the BiggerPockets, and that's where I met Myka. I met him at a BiggerPockets meetup that I hosted, and he showed it was more of a stock meetup, because I have some buddies that wanted to invest in the stock market. And so Myka showed up, told us all about weed stocks he was investing in, and and then he told us about Airbnb. He's like doing Airbnb out of his house. He got a place in Arlington doing Airbnb also, and I was fascinated. I was like, dude, we should start a podcast. You're like, what? You know, he didn't really. He's like, that's weird. And I was like, no, dude, people want to hear about this. This is cool. I'm blown away by it. I want to try to invest in it. And so I didn't have any experience in it. Myka did. So we started our show, and Myka was telling all about his experiences early on, you know, and that led me to. I was like, man, well, fuck, we got an Airbnb podcast. I got to do it, you know. So it made me jump into, you know, I jumped out of that house and turned it into an Airbnb, and, you know, all the trials and tribulations. It made the show better, like you said. So I started doing every fuck up imaginable, and which made for great. Every time I fucked up and did something stupid and let the wrong guests in or this and that, I was like, I'd be at the lowest point, and I'd be like, fuck, this is gonna make for a good podcast. This is gonna make for a good podcast. And so, but from there, I was like, this is so cool how our journey started, you know, with the podcast. And if anything, it's documenting something we can look back at and laugh our asses off, right? And so I love that aspect of it. Now, you know, like I mentioned earlier, people want to, I got a little Airbnb business. You know, got some bumps and bruises. I want to start a podcast, start telling people about it, start you know, networking and the stuff like that. What are some of the biggest don'ts, you know, you would tell like new podcasters?
Yeah, the biggest don'ts. Well, don't have the mindset that I did, that you didn't like, not that you need to show off or be flashy, but, you know, invest in the equipment. Like, you invest in your short-term rental business with the right tools, you know, getting a property management software, having guest screening or noise devices or dynamic pricing. Like, you're already investing in that. Invest in the same thing for your podcast. That way you're like, I don't know about you guys, but I don't want to listen to a phone call conversation, right? Like, I don't want to sound like people are in my ear as if I'm talking on the phone. I want to hear clear audio, like where I can just have no distractions. When my noise cancellation's on, I just hear your voice in my head. And so I think, you know, invest in the equipment, you know, take a couple $100s and get a decent microphone, get a decent boom arm if you need it, or even a stand. Look at, you know, there's a lot of good like kits out there that you can kind of look at. You can go to Amazon, like literally type in podcasting kit and kind of see, you know, price range and the equipment and all that setup. And YouTube's a good resource. You know, people explain how it all works and what pieces go together, and you can pretty much figure it out pretty quickly. You can call a pro like these guys and ask them what they got set up and, you know, how they do it.
And it's funny because like in the early days of when I was trying to find good podcasts to listen to learn about, you know, and there was a lot of I guess I don't know, I would say radio dudes or pitch dudes that would, oh fuck, I'll start a podcast, and then they do their podcast and learn about real estate and do this, do that, you know, had that radio voice and this and that. And I would listen to them a little bit, and I was like, man, But I liked, for example, the realness that Bigger Pockets was bringing. It was just two dudes talking about, they're learning real estate, trials and tribulations, bringing on people. And I was just gravitated more towards like the realness of some people doing podcasts instead of the, hey, radio guy here, and this is how you invest, and call my number, and commercial, and call my number. I just like, the podcast world don't want you motherfuckers. I was like, we want that's what I loved about the podcast world. We want real talk from real people that are really doing it, that ain't trying to freaking sales pitch me. That's anyways, that's I just wanted to get that out there before I forget.
Well, I'm glad you said that, because like the next part was that a lot of like COVID, a lot of people saw that like, oh, everything's closed, I can't do in-person stuff, and I can't go to conferences, I can't do this. How else are we going to sell our software or our product? Or we're going to create a podcast. Everyone's going to want to hear us pitch our product every 5 seconds on our show. It's going to be great. And then we're going to bring on our customers who are actually probably going to pay or give some kind of discount to be on our show and to talk about our product. Oh my God, it's fucking genius. Well, no, it was the worst. Like I saw so many of those fizzle out within months, if not weeks, of each other. And the biggest thing I've seen over the last 4 years is that some of my shittiest audio quality podcasts actually performed the best because the conversation was the most genuine, the most insightful conversation. Like people really do care about the content. So my point one, invest in your equipment, because if you imagine the best, my shittiest audio quality, but had the best content episode took off, imagine how much better that would have done with the better audio quality, right? Like, so just focus on really having that structure. Like it's good to kind of have some kind of structure, whether it's you do a little segment in the beginning. I love your guys's, you do live, let, thrive. So like that's great. Like, but like have that ability to let yourselves ask the questions that you want to ask. Be curious. Like dude, you just got me started on a whole thing. But like I posted a clip in our like community Slack channel that like the art of an interview, right? So Alex, I forget his last name, he's one of the co-founders of Gimlet, talking about what is the art of an interview and how do you make an episode or a podcast more content rich by being a better interviewer. And he goes into this whole thing. It's like you're really listening more than you're talking. You're picking up on body language, you're picking up on tone of voice, you're watching eye contact. You can find that one time that your guest gets really, really excited and kind of has like that, you kind of see them shift from the beginning. They're like, I'm Will Slickers and I do this and this, and then all of a sudden you got me excited and now here I am going. They're able to carry that energy into a great conversation. And so I think becoming the art of an interview is super incredible. And like I 100% believe, Steve, I see you do it all the time. You write notes. I see you write things down. Someone says something, you grab it. Myka, I see you do it too. I do the same thing. I have a black notebook right there on my computer stand, and it's filled with pages of questions. And, like I'll just use for an example, Andrew Kitchell said this. So what does this mean? How can he break this down? Or can he say this more? Or can I pull this more information out of him? And it's really an art. Like, I don't know, you just got me excited. So yeah, that's something I think is like the most important part. If you can become a better interviewer, listener, and podcast host, where you're asking the questions that more likely your audience is thinking as they're hearing, you're gonna nail it. So
yeah, that's like Steve's thing right there. That's why I always have to have Steve. Steve always, he's the question guy. He's like this. I'm like, oh hell yeah, that's why I can just take the notes. Now, how do you like to get, let's say someone starts an STR podcast and they want to come into your network. How do you vet those podcasts, right? Like, do they need to have a certain number of episodes, or do you vet their quality, or how do you go about doing that?
Yeah, a little bit of both. So we kind of created a little like HFM standard guide. So it's like we asked that everyone's had at least a minimum of 10 episodes, unless they're starting a network with us and we already know that they have that reputation in the space. Like, so I won't say her name, but we are signing a pretty big podcaster. She's had a podcast. She's leaving another company and she's coming on brand new with us, like brand new show, clean slate, everything.
Britney Spears.
You got it. How'd you know?
Knew it.
She's joining. It's crazy. Literally. But like normally we wouldn't do that. We wouldn't just like, all right, let's just create a brand new podcast with someone that we have no idea who they are, what they talk about, what their missions are. But she's obviously got the reputation. She's got the following. She's been well experienced. So that's different. But anyone that's already had a pre-existing podcast, like using you guys, for example, it was a no-brainer to be like, yeah, I've heard your guys' content before as a listener. I've been a guest. I know that you've way past the 10 episode mark. And I know that you're not just here to sell like that. At the end of the day, I think we've kind of realized who's like a real, like who's a wolf in sheep's clothing, I think is the term. And they're really just about themselves, trying to promote their own material, their own books, their own products, their own coaching, whatever it may be, rather than actually bringing value to a community. And so for us, it kind of is like those tiers, like minimum of 10. Are you past that point? Do you have like a clear mission? There's a whole like guide. I actually didn't send it to you guys, but I can give it to you guys at the end. But it's a whole like kind of little criteria. And then the biggest thing that we like to communicate is that we do not own your show. We do not own your content. We do not control you or tell you who to talk to or what to talk about. That's the biggest thing a lot of networks get shit on for, is because like, Barstool Sports, if you saw the whole Call Me Daddy thing or Call Her Daddy controversy where she left the Barstool Sports network due to money and content and direction and this. And then she went on to Spotify, and I don't know what the terms are of that agreement, but more likely she probably got a lot more freedom. But she probably has to make a certain amount of content per week, per month. So we want to get rid of that. We want to take away the cons. The big thing that we ask all the shows like yourselves is like, hey, consistency. Like if you publish every Tuesday at 5 a.m., keep publishing every Tuesday at 5 a.m. Don't stop. That's a big kind of like criterion mark. We don't want it, again, we don't want fizzle. We don't want people to get really excited and big and then just kind of drop away. It helps the network as a whole when everyone is contributing. I'm still doing it weekly. We have our one show every Monday. We have my show every Friday or Wednesday. And then, I do bonus episodes on Friday or Saturday if I have the inventory. So, trying to lead by example in that direction. But yeah, I don't know if that answers your question all the way through, but there's a couple little critiques there, or not critiques, but standards.
And that was one thing. Real quick. That was one thing. Like when me and Steve started talking about the hospitality network, I'm like, man, because me and Steve, we're very. I guess we're not professional like the other people, So when he was like, hey, we literally have a podcast called the No BS Short-Term Rental Podcast. So you're good. I gotta listen to it.
Yeah.
We may have to do a mashup.
But there's a lot of BS on there, though. I'm just kidding.
Because I like when Steve said it, I'm like, man, they want us. I'm like, have they listened to our shit?
Yeah.
Steve's like, yeah. And so we had the interview, and I'm like, oh, we're
not politically correct. We're not.
Yeah, Will was like, yeah. He goes, if you guys cuss, do your thing. So I was like, oh man, it was a no brainer, man. So yeah, definitely thank you for inviting us. But because we were like, we'll probably never get picked up, but someone took the chance.
It's just like I like you guys as guys, like just getting to connect with you off screen. Like you guys, like that's the thing. Again, it comes down to who's a wolf in sheep's clothing and who's a real sheep. Like if you guys are really genuinely caring about the network, and not the network of like the podcast, but like the network you guys have built through your show, the network of operators around the world that are genuinely going through the same stuff that you guys are, but you're just vocalizing it with a record button next to you, right? So this is super important. And I think, that's where we get really passionate about, is like, okay, why would we ruin any of this by putting our, 2 cents or, hiccups and other things in between, when really, if we just take away pain points, what do you love doing the most? Sitting behind that desk and behind that microphone, hitting record and publishing and promoting. Like that's the best part. So how can we power the rest and also help you grow along the way by monetization, by giving you better tools and products or resources, or even deeper analytics, if we just made the move to Megaphone. So it's like, how can we understand the audience better, help you understand the audience better so you can keep doing what you're doing. That's where we get excited, and that's where we kind of found that it's not Hansel and Gretel. What's the porridge like too hot, too cold, just right.
Oh,
type
Little Red
deal.
Riding Hood. Is that what it?
Or
Three
yeah,
Little
one of
Pigs?
those, one of the.
Oh,
So like we don't know. We don't
we're
know
short-term rental
our
people. We
fairy-
don't know what the hell.
we don't know our fairy tales or analogies very good. So yeah,
No,
super
I
good.
guess, and like you said, it is about. I mean, if I could give advice to podcasters out there, we got in it because we were just curious as fuck. You know, it was a brand new
Yeah.
industry. So we've been doing this like 5 years. It was like a brand new industry, and I wanted to learn about it. And I was like, well, shit. I was like, who do we ask? Who do we talk to? And this is before everybody that's done, has one Airbnb as a coach now. It's a lot of bullshit,
Yeah.
a lot of bullshit out there. And so we started, well, shit, let's see who has cool Airbnbs, and then we'll send them a message. You want to be on our podcast? So like it was like early on in one of our first 10 episodes, we had the Peter Bayhuth, the treehouse guy. It is the number one most wished for Airbnb in the world. I think it still is. But anyway, so I found, went online, Google, found him, found his phone number, and hey, you want to jump on our podcast? Who are you guys? Okay, yeah. And he came on and he just fucking, went scorched earth on Airbnb. So it was an interesting, we're like, holy shit, everybody's only been talking good stuff about Airbnb. Yeah. And he just went scorched earth on how they did him wrong and this and that, and putting his pictures all over the place, and they're taking money from him. I mean, it was like, whoa, what did we get in here? But then that just helped me like more curious. I'm like, so there's another side to all this stuff, so we just jumped into it because we wanted to learn the industry and then share what we learned with other people. And it's brought us a lot of money, and indirectly as far as like connections, and then working on deals with people, meeting amazing people, and the networking aspect is freaking phenomenal. But that's just from us being real and being being ourselves and just being curious. We come on here, we haven't tried to pitch products and stuff like that. We just want to learn from our guests that come on, and then sometimes me and Myka would just have some beers and just bullshit and talk about our week, how everything went, what all went wrong. And I said, everybody, a lot of shows just talk about all the good stuff, right? And we've gone into real great detail in all the bad stuff that's happened to us, and all of our losses. And if you go to, like you said, Clubhouse or a lot of the podcasts, it's just this is, well, I'm doing amazing, I'm a millionaire, win. That who the fuck? What does that help anybody?
Write an ebook after 6 months and raise capital, man. But no, it's horrible.
That's it, man. And then those, what's it called? Mother Nature will take care of them and wash them to the side. Because people feel
business. It's business karma, as one of my other guests I had on my show recently say. She's like, what you do in your business will come back to you. So if you're one of those guys who has one Airbnb, writes an ebook after 6 months, and gets become a global speaker at all these random conferences that have nothing to do with their industry, great, go do it, but guess what, it's going to come back to bite you in the ass. So I think like the one thing, or I love what you said, Steve, too, is like, this is us just being curious. And it's such a, like, if you, I don't know, this, like, people that aren't podcasters or they're not in the industry, have you ever told stories of some of the guests that you've had on the show to someone that has nothing to do with what you guys do, and they are just blown away? They're like, what? How did you meet this person? Like, I met him on LinkedIn. I connected with them. I reached out, asked them a couple of questions after they want to be on my show. And they said, yeah. And I got an hour's worth of killer content. And now we're friends, and I'm meeting up with them in Nashville to grab a couple beers to talk more, hang out, or whatever. That's the craziest part about it, is like the friendships you build from this thing. I would be surprised that, for me, like personally, if a lot of my past guests are still friends, like they're wanting to come back on the show, they're wanting to hang out or talk off record, they're wanting to like go into things deeper, learn you as a person, rather than just like kind of milk your audience and whatever that may be. So it's really cool. Like I never expected that part to be the part that was like the most unexpected, but also the most valued. So yeah, it's crazy.
It's powerful stuff, man. It's it is cool, the people you meet from this, and just it's a lot easier to what's it called, jump into the DMs when you say, hey, I gotta hop on my podcast. It's it's a lot easier than saying, hey, how do you do Airbnb? Just hop into the podcast and Brian Chesky hops on the show, and there you go. And but it is a great icebreaker, and so I do. If you have a passion for just learning, just knowledge, and just and hey, perhaps networking, I would suggest looking into starting. And how would people start off getting their own podcast?
Yeah, you can do a couple things. It just depends on how you kind of want to do it and take it. Anchor.fm is a free tool if you're tight on budget, but if you're looking to really scale with something and really grow a show rather than just like a podcast, I think getting into bigger platforms that host and distribute and give you analytics and buying the equipment, starting off with reading, like all these hosting platforms have content and blogs on what does it look like to form a podcast, how do you structure it, how do you edit, how do you do this, like it's all there. So I think really the big thing is just start Googling, just Google podcasts, how to start one, figure it out. What do you like? What do you not like? Listen to shows. The big question I always get asked for podcast stuff is like, oh, what's your favorite industry podcast to listen to? It's like, well, I listen to a lot of them because one, we're all networked connected, but then two, like sometimes mentally, I like to just not listen to anything in our industry related at all, because it can be a lot when you live and breathe it, right? So I find like true crime podcasts that I can enjoy and really unplug. Even though I'm not like a TV person, so you're not going to catch me watching Law and Order or all these like murder mystery stuff. I'm not into that normally, but I found a really good podcast that does it well, and it captures my attention and it helps me unfocus the other stuff. The number one podcast in the world that's not Joe Rogan anymore. He got dethroned recently by this podcast. That's an original Spotify podcast in partnership with DC called Batman Unburied. And so it's a literal story podcast that was created within Spotify. And it dethroned Joe Rogan recently off the number one podcast. And they've only have 3 episodes out right now. So crazy.
3 episodes and you dethroned Joe Rogan.
Yes.
Damn, that's crazy. Yeah.
Okay, now so as far as dethrone him, as far as how do you define that?
Well, the on the Spotify charts of podcasts, you'll see like what are the top performing podcasts from 1 to 100. He's been number 1 for months, if not a year plus. Whether before he joined Spotify and during. But this show came out, the trailer dropped, and the day that the first 2 episodes were released, it did over 11 million downloads, and they surpassed Joe's downloadership. So like bumped him from number 1 to 2 right off the bat. So crazy.
Is it gonna be just a limited run or what?
I don't know how many episodes they're doing, but they're dropping every Tuesday, and it's very well put together. Like what I did is I put my my sleep mask on, so I like sleep with my eyes like eye blinders, and I put in these noise cancellation headphones. I hit play, and I just like let the audio kind of create the visual for myself, and it was good. Like they just did really well with the footsteps and the breathing and the narration and the music and the sound effects, and like it was just like I felt like I was in a movie. Man. So it was epic. But to a question for you guys, I'm actually kind of curious on in regards to like podcasting. If you like had one thing that surprised you the most, or that you realized you enjoyed the most that you didn't think would catch you by surprise or that you enjoy, what has that number one thing been with your guys' podcast in the last 200 plus episodes you guys have done?
Surprised us the most. I'll let Steve start.
That surprised us the most with the podcast, man. Oh man,
I know I'm putting you guys on the spot, but
I think I know mine.
I'm genuinely curious.
I think I know mine. Like, I want to be honest. When we first started this thing, man, like we were literally had Steve's old microphones and pantyhose covering them, right? I'm dead serious. So I'm dead serious. So I didn't know.
Yep. Old school.
I'm serious. We wrapped pantyhose around these little microphones and we were recording. So
I love that.
He was like, I ain't buying no pop filter, you know. So like now, I look back 5 years ago And I'm like, I didn't think we would have 200 plus episodes. Like, I mean, you think it, but it's one of those things where you're consistently doing something, consistently. And it's like, you look up and you're like, damn, we did 200 episodes of this. And now when I'm like at like a short-term rental thing and people know who I am, I'm like, damn. Consistency does pay off. People know who you are. So I think that's the biggest surprise. And like, wow, we really grew it and people know who we are. That was my biggest surprise.
That is awesome. That I guess now I got time to think of it when just listening to you explain it, man, Myka. And I guess the
pantyhose got me, dude. I'm dying.
Pantyhose, yeah. I would get a clothes hanger and make a circle and put pantyhose on it, and then it would put it in front of because we listen to the first episodes that pop, 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 pop. You hear the popping, the kicking, and the ticking. Yeah. Anyway, that's back to I used to record home songs and shit with my band. I have a band. Anyway, so you learn things like that. Sure, Mike 96, still good, Mike. Anyways, so one of the most surprising thing for me is just how much of a stress relief this is for me, because I mean, I love the knowledge, I love the networking, the money it's thrown at us and everything, but just after me and Myka are so freaking busy, we're running short-term rental companies, we're running long-term rentals, we're buying real estate, we're doing all kinds of stuff. We got renovations going on, we got I mean, there's so much going on in this space, but when we hit these mics, we hit record, sometimes we have to drag ourselves to the mics. I'm not gonna lie, fuck. Yeah. Who are we interviewing? It's Wednesday. What do we? But when we hit play, man, it's just like, it's just like we just start talking about what we're passionate about, and we are passionate about this industry, and we talking about, and you can't talk about this shit with people at work. They don't care. With your spouse, whatever. They're like, okay, I get it. Whatever. Short-term rentals, blah blah blah. But and then if someone finally asks you at work about it, and you start passionately talk about it, you just see their eyes glaze over, like looking into a blue ocean, right? They're like, oh fuck this place. Okay, never mind. And then but here in this space where like we talk about other people that are passionate about this stuff, we get to unload, we get to ask fucking questions that we've always wanted to ask somebody. We can't ask nobody else. They're giving us this knowledge. We're laughing, we're cutting up, we're having some beers, it's just, man, it's my happy place, dude. I didn't realize how important someone needs something like that in their life, and this is 100%. my happy place, my mental space. I don't know, I fucking love it, dude.
You know what? Now that you said that, Steve, that is true. Like you talk to somebody, and then you talk to them, and that the issues they're having, you're like, damn, you're going through this shit too. And it's like relieving. It like relieves you, like, oh, someone missed a clean too, and they showed up and the place was fucked up. Oh, how did you handle it? Yeah. I'm serious. It is. It's really stress relieving, man.
It's therapy, dude. Podcast therapy.
It is.
Seriously, I love that. And like, dude, that's the I think, Myka, you kind of said it yourself before Steve, was that when you put your head up, right? Like after you had your head down for a while and you see over 200 episodes, we're at 206 right now. Like, what? You've been in your happy space, just creating your content, having the conversations you love. I definitely got to take what Steve's doing and have some beers while I do it, because that is like, every time I'm recording my show, it's like at 7 a.m. I'm like, shit, I got to wake up. But at the end of the day, like, that's the best part. And I think, I don't know about you guys, but if you saw a big shift when COVID hit March 2020, and then within pretty, let's say 6+ months after the initial shock of, oh my gosh, nothing's ever going to be the same, we're going to have to, do lockdowns, blah, blah, blah. I don't know if you saw the shift in, obviously, the big resignation, right? Everyone started quitting their jobs and started doing this, not because they had, didn't have a job, it's because companies were laying people off. It's because they realized they weren't fucking happy. They weren't happy. They were doing shit that they were told to do because of the expectation of other people in their life, whether it was society. And, everyone tells a young 16-year-old that, when you're 18, you have to go to college, buy a house, get a career, get married, have kids, have the dog, go on vacation once a year, and that's it. Like, that is one thing that happened to a lot of people. And then all of a sudden they realize, I can do this shit while I'm on the beach. I can do something that's interesting and I'm curious about. I can go into a completely different industry and not have to spend 20, 30 years in a career that my parents had to do, because that was the norm, right? Like my dad, he's been at Boeing for 28 years almost. I think it's like 28, 26, I give or take 2 years. But I don't know if he's happy. Like, does he enjoy doing that shit? I don't know. But the one thing I do see him enjoy is when he gets home and he's able to start messing around with dirt bikes with my brother or whatever. Like, that's where he becomes happy. So I don't know. In my head, I don't know if you guys saw it, but I've seen a lot more people make some drastic changes in their life and start doing things that make them happy. And for me, like you guys, the podcast and creating the network and, you know, the power of audio has been that. And I'm starting to think a lot of other people are doing the same thing. So I don't know.
Dude, I left my job 6 months ago, man. I know what you mean. Like that, these last 6 months, I got so much done. And then like some mornings, because I wake up at 5, some mornings I'm done working at 12, right? I'm like, damn. Yeah. I got the whole day I can spend with my daughter, my wife. My wife just left her job a month ago. So I'm like, man, you know, it's so much freedom that you have. And you know, and I left during the Great Resignation, because you're right, man. You realize you are happy, man. I'm like, I have to hurry up, rush to work, drop my kid off, drop my son off. I don't get to see him. Like, you come home, basically by the time you pick your kid up, it's time for him to go to bed and get ready for the next day. So yeah, man, it's just, man, you're right, dude. You're right. People weren't happy. I definitely wasn't. Now, man, I wake up refreshed.
Well, I didn't know that you just left your job 6 months ago. So what was can you tell the story a little bit? I did not know this.
Man, dude. So in October, so I went to the hospital in October. I ended up having pneumonia, and I got it from like some bad water or something. And when I was in the hospital, I was just sitting there. And I'm like, mind you, I'm in the hospital. I have pneumonia. No one can come visit me because all the COVID shit's going on, right? So this is like heavy COVID shit. My wife's 7 months pregnant, and she can't get there. So they won't let her up. So I'm in the hospital by myself. My son's worried. And I just sat there and I'm like, is this the life I want to live? Is this the life that I want to live and say, okay, you work 40 hours a week. If you get sick, your kids are worried. And I just sat down and I'm like, what's stopping me from leaving my 9 to 5? And you can actually see it behind me. I don't know. I wrote down all my fears of what stopped me from leaving my 9 to 5. And then after I wrote down all my fears, I wrote down the solution to all of them. And then I was like, I can do it. Then I went back to work. I put my 2 weeks in, man, just been going ever since, man. I was just like, and then I think I listened to Steve Harvey. He said, I forgot the quote. He basically said, if you don't think, he goes, the time to take that leap is now. He goes, because if you keep putting it off, you're just going to have another excuse. And I was like, man, I've invested enough in myself, into this industry, that I think I can do it. And I just took the leap, man. It's been going great.
Dude, I just got chills. Like that's like that's the fucking magic behind this whole thing. I don't know if that feeling or that moment that you had could be expressed to anybody that hasn't experienced it, right? Like they haven't had that moment. And like I know there's, you know, when you have that shift, like when you're working a 9 to 5 or working a job and you know you want to get out of it, like that's that thought, that like seed that's sitting in your brain, you know, whether you've left or not, or you're wanting to leave and you're thinking about it, or you have pulled the trigger at whatever stage, it's just like there's something about that just is without words for me. But that was awesome. I'm really excited that, like, unfortunate that it had to be in the hospital, but at the end of the day, like, so cool, dude. That's so cool.
Yeah, it was my wake up call. I'm happy about it. You know, it was a wake up call.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, damn. I got chills.
Powerful stuff, man. Yeah. I'm on the precipice too, so I have a goal set this year of hopping out. So man, I have those epiphanies quite often, and they're happening more and more often. So I feel what Myka's going through. I have a good buddy at my job just passed away, man, a few weeks ago. and he yeah, it was some kind of deal. He never got checked out. He just wanted to keep working doubles, making that money, getting, work, killing, he fucking worked himself to death, man. I'm like, why? I mean, you got kids, you got a wife, you spent most of your good time at work, and that's just like, man, if you can get out, if you can secure things and get everything in place, in a good spot, and it's hard, but man, you gotta just fucking make that leap.
Yeah.
Seriously. And there's nothing wrong with people that want to work a job and like have that career. Like, I think, Steve, you've gotten to experience a taste of having your own business and having that freedom. Myka, you are now experiencing that now within the last 6 months, and all this stuff. Like, so people that really thrive and crave that I want to control my own life. I want to be able to be done working at noon or not work today at all, or go work in Mexico for a month, like have that freedom, then great. But there's people that don't want that, and that's totally cool. My thing is just like the biggest wake up call is like, are you happy? At the end of the day, if it's a 20-year career at X, Y, and Z corporation, great. Do that, because that's what makes you happy. Is it getting out of your job and starting a vacation rental business? Great, do that. Like, is it starting a podcast? Is it getting into stock trading, or is it getting into, dude, one thing I learned today is somebody is domain flipping full time. They just buy domains and they flip them. I'm like, what the hell? That's crazy. Like, if that makes you happy, do it. But no, that's, you guys, I really enjoy the stories and like the stuff that you guys are doing. Like, this has been really cool. So
yeah, I like that, man. You're a good interviewer too, man. You're putting us on the spot, and that's what's cool, man. You asking the questions that dig deeper than just the regular, hey, what kind of towels do you use, or sheets. That was early on days, and I even said in the early on episodes, I was like, this is our podcast. Sorry, I'm apologizing now because these episodes are probably gonna suck, but we're gonna try to get better for you. I said that in the early episodes. I remember that shit.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's how you learn, man. You jump into something that you suck at, right, and then you get better at
100%.
it. So there's no way around it. You can't just be a radio voice guy. Hey, buy my fucking book. Anyways, so. Man,
100%.
Great episode. We just I know our fans like to listen to hear about the short-term rental world and stuff like that. We bring that to them almost every week, but this is an important side of it too, man. I mean, if you really want to get your voice out there, you think you're curious and you have a passion for it, go start your podcast and start at least you get to meet people, interview great people like Mr. Will Slickers, and you never know where it's going to take you, where the next guest is going to take you. You might do some business with them. That's what I love about this.
100%. I agree. I couldn't have said it better myself. Stevie Stacks. Stevie Stacks.
Stevie Stacks. Money Myka. With Slick Willie. So yeah, man. So thank you for hopping on. Thank you. I'm so excited to be part of the HFM, radio network. Is that radio network or podcast network? I'm sorry.
Podcast. That's okay.
And we started talking, man, I wouldn't keep going on with you, but we talked about Batman Unburied, and you say that, you put the things over your eyes, and you're feeling it. I remember, I go way back to audio tapes, where you can check them out at the library and stuff like that. My stepmom, I don't know, she lent me she had some tapes, and that's back when in college, man. How fucking long ago that is. And I was like, and I just one night I couldn't sleep. I said, I'll pop one of these tapes in, right? These cassettes. And it was Interview with the Vampire. This is before the movies, right? And so I listened to that, but the way, I mean, these audiobooks, you've listened to audiobooks, but it's just like, it's not just someone reading the fucking book. It's something, they had the music going on. It was like the acting, the performance. And I was like, man, this is so freaking cool, And so the fact that they're making podcasts that have that quality to them, man, that's exciting. That's an exciting thing right there. And I love audiobooks. I don't know, what's Audible? Do you do Audible? I mean, I don't.
Oh yeah. Like any book that I want to read, I'm on Audible. Like Gary Vee just put out 12 and a half. I'm reading a book called Super Founders, which I highly recommend. It's also on Audible, but I particularly, for some reason, this book, because it kind of goes into some data. When it comes into like numbers and data, I like to read it. I like to visualize it rather than hear it. So any book though that I read or want to read, I just put on Audible. I go to the gym, I work out. It's not pumping. It's not like, oh, I'm so pumped for the gym. It's like I warm up on a treadmill. I listen to my book, and then if I need pump, I put on music. But most of the time, I'm usually listening to a podcast or an audiobook there. Yeah.
Cool, man. You said the founders or was it the two founders?
Yes, it's called Super Founders, and it's
Super
by
Founders.
Ali. I forget his last name. It's I'll send you a link for the show notes for anyone like they evaluate companies like Airbnb, Stripe, all these billion-dollar companies, and they compare it to they find the similarities, the differences, and then they take this random group of 200 founders that haven't hit that billion-dollar mark, that unicorn mark, and they do a comparison of the groups and like, all right, like who's going to be on track to become a billion-dollar company from this group, or what are the characteristics? Did they go to the same college? Were they a single child? Did they have a family? Did they what nationality were they? Were they immigrant? Were they in tech? Were they in blah? Were they in this? Did they go to a certain university? Whatever that may be, and they just analyze all of it, and it's super fascinating. Super fascinating.
Cool. It reminds me of how I built this. I really love how I built this.
Yeah,
that's a cool one.
Yeah.
And one more question. You saw the movie The Founder? That got you going?
Yeah. I saw that founder.
He's an asshole. He screwed him over, but I just love the story of how he built that shit. I don't know. That's I call it entrepreneur porn. Anyways. Anything awesome to add to this amazing conversation, Myka?
No, that was it, man. I really enjoyed this convo, man. This is a really good conversation. I really enjoyed how you're able to see the whole podcast, the STR podcast from a bigger scope, from the mountaintop. You can see it. That's what I love. So, man, continue to do what you do, Slick Willie. And we definitely thank you for inviting us on. So we're definitely happy to be on the Hospitality FM podcast network.
Where can people find you, bro?
Of course, you can find me on LinkedIn. It's my favorite platform. So Will with 1L Slickers, or you can go to hospitality.fm and you can find out more about myself there through the contact or the About Us page. So that's 2 places.
Will with 1L, because he ain't taking 2 L's. I'll tell you that much.
No way. Take one, I lost once. I'm not losing again, baby.
Well, thanks, man. Thanks for hopping on. This is a great show. There's 3 dudes just passionate, talking about shit they love. And so, love you, man.
Love it.
All right, man. Too. Thank you.
Later.
Peace. Man, that was another great episode, dude. That was a really good episode, man. We didn't really talk about short-term rental stuff. We talked about, the podcast world around it, man. And that was a good question he asked, like what was the most surprised us about this? And that was, after I look back, I'm like, damn, we really have over 200 episodes, man. It's crazy, man. I definitely didn't think we'd be here. And man, I look forward to keep on going because it's been fun. It's definitely stress reliever. I think it actually helps us in the business side too, right? Because like you realize other people going through the other same shit, and you can release, talk, and then ask questions about it.
And we're being real. We're being ourselves. It's not like we started it. Okay, I'm going to start this to help my business grow. And a lot of people will do that so people can hear about my coaching program or seminar or shit like that. No, we started it because we wanted to learn the industry, man. We wanted to learn about it. We were curious about it. We wanted to be ourselves and just have fun conversations. And so we were real, and people love that. It's the number one thing people tell us when they meet us. Man, we like how y'all keep it real. All of you look at our reviews on go leave us a review, please. People, leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. But they say, they keep it real. We love them. They ain't trying to sell us nothing. They're keeping it real, this and that. I love that. That's my favorite feedback, man. And that's our most common feedback.
I love that too, man. Matter of fact, the guy who was at the meeting in Dallas, he was like, you guys, I like the one guy, he's talking to us in a group and he's like, you guys are the only podcast, a short-term rental podcast I'm still subscribed to. I was like, damn, really? And he kept going in talking about us. And the guy across, he's like, you got to give this guy a shirt or something. He's like a major fan, man. So it was crazy, that people really just follow your journey and, and resonate with you. You find the podcast that most resonates with you. And, it's been fun and we love doing it, and I love bringing guests on, talking about it. And, might have to pull some episodes, but I'd rather, I do want to say this to people that do listen to the show and that want to be on the show. Come on the show from a place of, of your experience and like how, and if you don't come on, if you're just doing this shit for a quick buck, if you're turning this into a business, then come on the show. That's what we want. People that want to do this as a business to help somebody, or, you know, don't, hey, let's set up this arbitrage and get you a 1 bedroom, 1 bath, and we'll get all that bullshit, man. You know, like if you're doing this as a legit business and can help people that listen, that want to get into it, definitely come on. And we love to chop it up with you, you know, shoot the shit, and we can keep on, you know, keep on keeping on.
Keep on keeping on. Shout out to the rabbi, Mazel Tov. Shout out to Romy Rome. He still listens, man. He started from the bottom with us, man.
Oh yeah, Romy Rome. He always hits me up on IG, man. Romy Rome's killing it.
He's killing it.
Doing rehabs and everything. I was like, oh shit, Romy Rome, man.
Travel nurse specialist, travel nurse specialist, Romy Rome.
Romy Rome, man. Really, that's crazy. But yeah, man, thank y'all for continuing to listen, man. It's been awesome. It has been awesome. And yeah, definitely subscribe on YouTube and leave us a good review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to podcasts, man.
Yeah, keep spreading the word, spreading the love, and keep living, letting, and thriving.
And we are out.
Peace.
Later.
Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of Live, Let, Thrive. Be sure to tune in next week for all the latest in the world of Airbnb and all that entails. Bye-bye.